The voice of all things, an ability that comes up time and time again sporadically throughout the One Piece series. But the closer we get towards the end of the series, the more prominent it becomes. With one of its earliest incarnations being Zoro's clash with Da's Bones in Alabasta, he used this ability in order to learn how to cut through all things or nothing at all. A fundamental understanding that his teacher taught him about listening, understanding, taking a moment to just feel the world around you, the voice of the world. Now, since then, it's taken on a more kind of literal sounding perspective when it comes to voices, quote unquote. When it came to the events of Fisherman Island, we saw that you could have it in the capacity of Luffy, or even Roger, or even Odin, where you can hear certain creatures, ancient, almost primordial creatures, who definitely had to have existed for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it's not as though they are able to hear all creatures, but specific ones, those who know of the ancient world from before the Void Century. The likes of the Neptunians or Sea Kings, who actually knew about the ship that Joy Boy had created or wanted to be created. The likes of Zunisha, ancient creature who roams the seas, forever unable to stop or pause, giving an ancient direction or punishment for all time. And then you have those who are actually able to communicate back to these creatures, such as Shirahoshi, or even Momonosuke. Or is it Shirahoshi? That begs the question. I mean, Shirahoshi's power is associated with her being an ancient weapon known as Poseidon, but is it also that she's able to feel the voice of all things? Because when it came to the Sea Kings, the Neptunians, it didn't seem as though she was quite able to understand them back, as though she was able to hear them. She could command them, though it didn't seem as though she could hear them. So is there a correlation there, or isn't there? I feel like there is. I feel like what makes Shirahoshi, an ancient weapon, could also in some way correlate to Momonosuke and make him an ancient weapon as well, to some degree maybe, because recently in the One Piece chapters, for some reason, despite the fact that Luffy had been knocked unconscious, falls into the sea, and by all accounts seems to be dead, he was able to communicate to Momonosuke through the voice of all things for how many miles away he was and tell Momonosuke, I'll be back. I will defeat Kaido. I'm not done yet. How? How was he able to do this? What is the voice of all things truly? We'd only ever seen it happen with more ancient creatures, this communication abilities, but to have it be that Luffy was able to communicate with Momonosuke? Is it possible that Momonosuke could communicate back to Luffy? How much of a through line of this ability actually exists? And apparently this is a natural ability of the Three-Eyed Tribe. What is it about these people that give them the ability to just read the poneglyphs, or at least detect what these poneglyphs are able to say? This power that was coveted by Charlotte Linlin, Big Mom. Hell, it seemed as though Luffy was able to communicate through the voice of all things to get the Heart Pirates to come and get him in the ship. What is the extent of this ability? What drives this ability? Is this ability one that has allowed Luffy to gain so many allies and Nakama? Is it something that has always existed, or something that was only developed over time? I've come to the theory that it's potentially what drove the former world leaders, those who would make up the Celestial Dragons, to destroy the ancient people. These ancient celestial dragons felt threatened by this ability to communicate with all things and everything. There was a certain race of people, a certain kind of people, who were just so inherently in tune with the world around them that they could create almost anything, communicate with almost anything. I think that is what Poseidon is, the ability to communicate with the Sea King. That is what the ancient Kazukis were always able to do, to communicate with ancient creatures. And hell, even what allowed the creation of Pluton. This ability to just understand the kind of ship that would make you indomitable no matter what might come your way. But as we go along, the question is arisen more and more. How did the celestial dragons defeat such a capable people? We continue, or at least I continue, to heap and heap more of these skills and these through lines all to the ancient people that have some association with the One Piece. The ancient weapons, the voice of all things, the One Piece in general. There feels like there's some kind of through line to all of this. But with all these things, it creates the question, if the ancient kingdom that's associated with all these mysteries had all these weapons, powers, abilities, why were they defeated? Was it just the malice of the world that saw them as demons, possibly? The thought of, oh, these people are able to communicate with all these ancient elements or create all these things. They have to be demons. They have to be monsters to be able to do this. The enemy of the gods. It brings together the question that the fact that those with the will of D and those of the Kozuki clan might have more in common than we ever thought. And yet, it's also not an ability that we've seen that Law has as well. But what I ultimately do believe, unequivocally, is that this was a skill of the ancient people, that it will end up leading to the discovery of the other ancient weapons, an understanding through the voice of all things, an ancient communication that allows the true history of the world to not be forgotten. There is a promised day that has been prophesied and that the voice of all things is leading into, and I definitely feel that there is some connection that we haven't quite seen. But it's still hard to pinpoint exactly where all of this comes into play and how. But something ancient is stirring. Something ancient is starting to awaken. The promised day that the Neptunians have been waiting for when it came to the ship that Joy Boy had made the promise with the ancient Poseidon for, the Noah. There's some association there. Zunisha. These two things, the Noah and Zunisha, these things that shepherded these two different races, the fishmen and the minks, respectively, there has to be some correlation between them, the ancient weapons, and whatever is possibly on the moon as well. It's not so much that these ancient weapons were weapons in general. It was that these were all a way of bringing races, people, all together and using the voice of all things to communicate and create a better and more prosperous world. But there were those who feared it and wanted none of these things to come to pass for whatever reason. They saw it as a threat and they feared it. Thus, they destroyed it. And they labeled them weapons in order to keep them away from people, to make them taboo, to make them things that it would be like nobody should approach these things. Nobody should have any association with these things. They're dangerous. Keep away. And yet it is only through these things, the ancient weapons, the voice of all things, that a true, complete, and free world will be formed. But that's all I've got. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think I might have had some kind of inkling to what the true history of the voice of all things might be? Or do you think there are some holes in my theories? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, bell, all that good YouTube stuff. Or don't, I ain't your daddy, but I still love you like one. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and this has been a One Piece Theory. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.